Hi everyone, I'm Kate, and my fabulous guest today, Skye Bartlett, has been in property management for multiple decades, close to 20 years in the industry. These people are the stayers. And 10 years of that running her own business, Debonair Property Management, in the town of Geelong. If you're local, she doesn't need an introduction, but if you're not local and for our perhaps international listeners, Skye, can you tell us a little bit about what got you even into the industry in the first place? We'll go into a bit of your background and then into today's current affairs and the things that you would like to fix. Skye is one of the reasons that I wanted to do this podcast because our conversations are so rich. I really just wanted to record it because there isn't enough of this kind of content, I don't think, on the internet. Sorry, Skye. So please tell us what got you into the industry and, importantly, what's helped you to stay. You obviously get a lot of enjoyment out of it.
I do get a lot of enjoyment out of it. It has its ups and downs like any job. I was actually really lucky at the age of 12. My grandfather had a real estate agency in Geelong and I was asked to be a receptionist on a Saturday morning. So that's where it all started for me. I've had a lot of family in the real estate business, mum, aunties, uncles, cousins, obviously my grandfather. So the opportunity to work in a family business was such an awarding job and something to be really proud of. So I did reception work. I went away, did uni, and then somehow was just dragged back into property management. Started as a receptionist. I watched a property manager for a while. They left. And then I thought, well, you know what? I could probably do the same thing. I had amazing training by a property manager who'd been in the industry for 20 plus years. So I felt quite confident in what I was being taught and having the support behind me. I then had an opportunity 10 years ago to start my own business. And the main reason I started my business was I have two beautiful children and one of them turned around and said, "Mum, you're never at school pickup." So the only way to fix that up was to run my own business and have a little bit of freedom at the same time. Property management definitely has changed in 20 plus years. It was sort of quite laissez-faire with the rules and the houses and, the standards of properties. Today, the standards are quite high, which they should be anyway. But I just think at the time, there were a lot of owners out there who just saw an opportunity to buy perhaps cheaper homes and went, great, we'll put some tenants in there and they can help us pay the mortgage.
As in, you think that that's how it developed?
Yeah, absolutely. I think people just thought, because people have reasons why. There are lots of different people out there who buy investment properties. So you've got, the mum and dads who are looking perhaps for their children, what they're going to do with their children down the track. You've got the people who are looking, at retirement. What asset are they going to have at the end when they're ready to retire? And then you've got people who are developers, so if they can find a home on a good block of land that they can later subdivide and not put a lot of money back into that property, so someone can rent it. And when the time comes, 90% of the time they bulldoze those homes and then put 4 or 5 units up later on. And I think people just, I think I always look at it and go, Mr. Renter Provider, would you live in this property? Are you happy to put yourself in this property? If you wouldn't put yourself in this property, then how can you expect to put other renters in it? And that's how I look at it.
Gosh, you've got to have such a vast array of experience and people that you've interacted with over a couple of decades. I can see you flashing back through the memories now. Let's go really juicy for a minute. What are some of the things that you've learned that you didn't know as a beginner? One of the things that I would like to highlight to listeners, it doesn't matter if you're a property manager or a landlord or investor, I guess, is that there does seem to be an extreme difference between someone just taking care of a rent roll and then there being a high turnover of staff in a maybe franchised agency versus people with a lot of experience.
I honestly believe property management isn't something you can just walk into. I think there are a lot of people out there. I mean, the courses that you have to do become a property manager, back in my day, it was an 8-week course. Did it at the Gordon, and you came out and you could then, be a reception or a sales agent or a property manager. I always thought and was taught to learn from the start. So, become a receptionist, see how that goes. Then I can, if I wanted to be property management or sales, I could see what, how it was. I feel a lot now just go straight into property management. And it's life skills that you've got to learn along the way. And some of the situations that you can be put in, like you've got these renters telling you that they can't afford rent. And, you could be that person who goes, well, that's not my problem. Like, you signed up, pay the rent, I'm going to kick you out if you can't. Like, you've got to be so tactful about it. And these people, it's, their livelihood, it's their roof over their head. We're talking about adults. So when I was younger, I did find it quite confronting to think that I was educating, 40 and 50-year-olds, saying that if you just paid an extra $10 towards your rent each week, then, over a 12-month period, you'd have a week and a half rent up your sleeve. And you just see that light bulb moment in their eyes, and you think, how has no one ever told you that, or, thought of ways to help? So yeah, look, it's very confronting at times, and definitely over COVID, people lost their jobs, and you had to, have a heart, and you had to really be open. And I suppose that's something I've always been with all my renters from day one, is just be open with me. If you're going to miss your rental payment, give me a call beforehand. Call me before I call you, because that call goes such a long way. If I'm the one calling you going, where's your rent? And you're like, oh yeah, I just had a bad week. But if you call me and say, Skye, I'm letting you know I'm not paying my rent this week, but I'm going to pay it next week, or can we go on a $20 extra plan? Like, that goes such a long way. And when I have that conversation with the owner that you've rung, they've rung me to talk to me, that also goes a long way with the owner to say that, yeah, they see it as a commitment, something in their life has happened, but they will fix that up.
How do you find negotiating? Okay, so that's what the tenant says is the tenant perspective. And I've often likened this industry, I'm new to learning, the whole reason behind doing this thing is that you guys are the meat in the sandwich, having to deal with tenants and landlords, and then ideally some formal qualification and ongoing credit points, which is not mandatory, but I know you're registered with those bodies, so you probably do them anyway. But then in that scenario where somebody is saying I can't pay my rent for that 1 week, can you expand on that? And what have you noticed in terms of having to then communicate with the landlord and who covers that?
Yeah, so I suppose when I meet an owner for the very first time and we're looking at their property and we're talking about fees and structure and the type of renters that they're looking for and the rent they're going to get, I really encourage that they all have a buffer. You need to have a buffer. No one knows what is going to happen. I mean, we just have to look at what happened, with COVID again. No one knew, no one saw that happening. There were those people who had put money aside for that rainy day, and COVID was that rainy day. The thing was, we didn't know how long that rainy day was going to go for. And that's the same thing with owners. You can't be that owner living on that oily rag. It's not going to work, honestly. You don't know what is going to pop up in an investment property. You could have your hot water service burst. Well, there's $2,500. You're going to have ongoing maintenance on your property. You're going to have your rates notice, your insurance. If you're really relying on that rent, going hypothetically, I'm getting $1,500 a month. You need to know what it's going to cost and what extras, and have that up your sleeve. So yes, look, it's hard for me to make that phone call, but at the same time, it shouldn't be an, oh no, that's terrible, I'll be okay, Skye, because they need to have a buffer.
Yeah.
And if you don't have a buffer, then you just, yeah, you're lining yourself up for trouble.
I guess it's investing is like a responsible business decision, so you would hope or expect that it's known that there's obviously other expenses, but maybe they don't know. Is there some way that you recommend people get educated, or is that just a conversation with you that they could have?
I think it comes from the property manager having been constantly educated. We're always educated, and then it's flowing on that information onto your renters and onto your renter providers, you know, explaining to them, these are the things that are going to come up. This is what's going to come up. You know, are you prepared for this? Mr. Renter Provider, I hope that I can rent your property within that 28-day notice that your renter gives me. However, it may not happen. Have you got a buffer, you know, some money lying around? Mr. Renter Provider, you know, when your tenant gives notice, I then have charged my letting fee and my advertising costs. So you probably won't get rent for the first month when your new renter moves in. Are you know, have you got something to cover that?
What else would you say that they have to be prepared for as a landlord? And it's so interesting that the conversation's gone this way, but it's a good education for them. What do you wish landlords knew? Is there anything else apart from what you've just talked about with regards to costs?
I suppose that, you know, at the moment, with the way the governments are, that anything can change at any time. That you could have, and you're right, we weren't going down this path. We could have a compliant property right now on the 10th of May 2024. However, in 2 years' time or in 12 months' time, that property may not be compliant because the rules are constantly changing. What you can and can't do, you know, electrical things are changing on what requirements you need on switchboards. Gas is the same. You know, eventually they're talking about having no gas appliances in property. So there's that cost as we speak now. And Mr. Landlord, you need a new stovetop. Do we go gas? Do we go electric? Like what's going to happen? Who knows? I don't have that crystal ball, nor do they. But do we spend $2,500 on a new gas heater, or do we just make the switch and go for a split system? They're those conversations and those, you know, just talking in general about it. And I suppose I always make it clear to a lot of the renter providers, this is my opinion. You know, they're talking about it. It's happening. It's going to happen. It could be 10 years' time. It could be 5 years' time. But when it happens, it usually there is no warning and bang, you click your fingers and you're notified that, you know, we're not going to have gas appliances anymore in properties.
Out of all the people I've spoken to in this niche, and maybe it's because of our common relationships, but you really seem to be very on top of all of the legislation.
Well, you have to be.
And we're in Victoria, everybody. There's a lot of legislation that's going on for anyone that's overseas that's listening. Can you just expand on that for a moment?
So I think it's really hard. I mean, one thing that'd be great is if we all have the same regulations in Australia. It doesn't make sense that, you know, in one state it's different. I know Queensland recently brought in the minimum standards in the gas and electrical, but Victoria have been doing it since 2021. And, you know, so when it hit Queensland, Victoria's like, we've been doing that for ages. And they're like, oh my gosh, you know, what do we do? What do we do? So you have to be, because, you know, at the end of the day, the information you're giving to your renter providers has to be correct. You know, it can't be ad hoc. You know, it's like your mortgage broker. They've got to give you the right lessons and teach you what to do. It's just the same. It's just knowing it and being updated, and I guess at the same time asking questions, you know, with other people in our industry. You know, what do you think of this? How's this going to go? What do you think? You know, and every owner is different, and every phone conversation that I have is different.
Oops. And so you're talking about legislation, Skye, and the fact that it's actually taking, you know, up to 60% of a property manager's time. Can you?
I think because, so back in 2021, we all knew about it, and still dealing with COVID and the after effects of COVID. The thing with the government was nothing was just slowly brought in. It was just bang, here you go. It doesn't matter what you've just dealt with COVID, and we were still remember 2021, we were still going through COVID. So for a lot of people and a lot of property managers, it was, you know, sink or swim, really. They were our options. You know, we've got renter providers needing money. We've got renters without jobs. We've also got renter providers without jobs. So, you know, we're trying to keep that going. But then on the other hand, you've just said, right, every time a new renter moves into a new property or a new lease renewal is signed, you need to go and make sure that you've done these gas and electrical, you know, checks on the property. And then when they're coming back, and I'm sure if you talk to other property managers, majority of them are coming back not compliant, not because of a property manager not doing their job, just because we can't see behind walls and we can't, you know, we're not electricians and we're not plumbers, pretty much what it came down to. So there were these things that needed to be done. So there's more expenses that needed to be done. And, you know, so you get on top of that. And then, you know, it's constantly, you know, when you do a disclosure statement now for a property. So a disclosure statement is given to the owner for them to disclose anything about their property, including if, you know, the property has had a compliancy check done. And if it came back not compliant, that needs to be written on there. Then it needs to be written what has been done to now rectify it to make it compliant. So, you know, you've got to go back to the property and go, okay, so was it compliant? Yes, great. Well, that's an easy box. No, okay, not compliant. Why wasn't it? Okay, it was because of the switchboard. Did the switchboard get upgraded? Yes, the switchboard. So it's a lot of going backwards and forwards. Whereas when I first started the industry, Mr. Renter Provider, or back then a landlord, do you like this tenant? Great. I'll do a lease now, bang, sent out. There's so much more to getting a lease together with this disclosure statement. And, you know, so that takes time because it has to go out to an owner. We all know people don't return things. You know, what's in it for them? Well, at the moment there's a lease, that's why they return it. But, you know, you're having to do that, and then you get the lease, and then you send the disclosure statement off to the renter provider, so the renter, who then reads it, make sure that they're happy with the property. Then the lease goes out. So it's just constant. You know, when you get a report back that's you know, from whoever's doing your safety audits, is it compliant? Great. Let me tell you, when they're compliant, they're the most easy ones to deal with. But when they're not compliant, it's, you know, organizing quotes for whatever needs to be made compliant. It's then talking to the renter provider and saying, hey, look, unfortunately, your property was not compliant. These are the quotes. Are you happy for me to go ahead? You know, yes, no. They really don't have a choice. So it's 90% of the time it's yes. But it's constantly ongoing. And if you knew that every 2 years that property was going to be compliant, it'd be such a breeze. But you just don't know, because you don't know what's going to change in a 2-year window. And you probably see it more now, and I sort of look at it more now as a property manager, because things do change. Whereas, you know, I'm ringing up my plumber or my electrician going, but hang on, 2 years ago this passed, why is it now? Oh, you know, they decided they need to do this now, or they need to do that to make it more safety, or no, they changed their mind, we don't need to do this. So it, you know, it's really it's time management. Like, it takes a lot of time. And I suppose at the same time, it's quite stressful for both the owner and the property manager to make sure that at the end of the day their property is compliant.
While we're on the topic of, I guess, more current affairs and the issues that have been changed constantly with obviously legislation, another hot topic is obviously budgetary concerns. Everybody is feeling the pinch. I mean, you and I, we grocery shop, so nobody is not included in that. Not even just Australia, but worldwide. What do you think is going to happen to the industry, the property management industry, renting, versus what would you like to see? Or any
Well, yeah, that's a great question, Kate. I suppose we don't know what's going to happen. We can see what's going to happen, as in rents are going to go up because costings of investment properties are going up. You know, it's your insurance, it's your rates, it's your maintenance, probably your property management fees, it's your advertising costs. It's all those things. But then it's really hard because you need to pass those costs on. So who do they get passed on to? They get passed on to the renter, who, like you and I, whether we rent or not, we're also struggling. So it's a roll-on effect. And I get why renter providers need to put the rent up. I understand it. And you know, that's where you sort of sit in the other spot and go, renter, I understand that your costs have gone up too, but so have the owners. And, you know, it's a really hard thing to juggle. I can't see, I mean, I still remember when I first started, a 1-bedroom property in Belmont in Victoria would be like $100 a week. And now it's like $400 a week. that's over a 20-year period. So it's really crazy to see how expensive things have become, and even properties in areas that used to be a lot cheaper and sort of were known to be cheap, they're not even cheap anymore. I had someone looking for a property the other day wanting to spend $350 and wanting it to be 3 bedrooms and 1 bathroom and a lock-up garage, and it's like that almost doesn't exist anymore. You need you need to pay $420, and it's like, but we can't afford that, and it's really hard, because people are looking at what they can afford. And my hat goes off to anyone who says, I can't afford that, Skye. Like, this is my maximum. We've worked it out. The budget is $400 and not $420. Yes, $20 a week is, it doesn't sound a lot, but it's $80 a month, and the rest of it goes on. So for someone to say to me, this is my budget, this is the cutoff, my hat goes off to them, because I would rather I don't want to see renters struggling because they've put themselves and gone, you know what, we really just wanted this property. We wanted the dishwasher, the ensuite, this, a bit more of a backyard for $50, but we're then going to sit there for the next 12 months totally struggling. Skye's going to call us, Skye's going to text us, reminding us that our rent's behind.
What would it look like then in an ideal scenario? So
an ideal scenario would be, perhaps there'd be, government rewarding, investors in some way, in some shape or form. And I suppose rewarding maybe is not the right word, but to hear the government turn around and say to a family, a mum, dad, 2 children, you're rich because you own investment property. I just don't know where they get that idea from. The people that I deal with, look, I'm not saying they're rich or they're poor. I mean, their lives may be rich in different values, not just by money. But I think it's really, they're not rich. They're just the everyday person trying to get ahead in life, trying to plan life and how the end of the life, those retirement age stages in their life look. And they just want to be comfortable. Majority of my rent roll, they don't have multiple properties. It's just one property. And that one property means so much to them. If the government could just somehow look at what, these rich people that you're calling are actually putting roofs over people's heads. So what can you do to entice them to keep the property? You're making them do all these different costing things, but what could you do in return? Do we need to have land taxes? Really? Could that be something that you don't give them? Because the $2,500 or $3,000 that it's gone up to this year is $3,000 that they can do the minimum standards, the gas, electrical checks, and anything that needs to be done, they can put that money into that.
Crazy. Do you know what the government's ideal is? You might not know the answer to this question. It just popped into my mind. I wonder if anybody knows actually. What framework is it built on? Are we, we certainly don't seem to be, for example, looking at the Swedish and saying, well, they do it really well and their financial position is great, imports, exports, whatever, and, cost of living, standard of living, all that stuff is going really well. Well, let's model them. I've always thought, why aren't people copying, including the government, more successful people in terms of whatever the thing is that you want to get better at? Where do you think, if you have an opinion, where do you think the government or whoever's making these rules might get these ideas from?
I have no idea. I don't think they've come and spoken to a property manager. I don't think they've gone. So in Victoria, we have the REIV. I definitely don't think they've gone and had conversations with them. In fact, I know when news release is brought out, people are straight on their doorstep going, what can you do? How can you help property managers, real estate agents? Like, who came up with this idea? Do you have an investment property yourself? Like, maybe you don't, because if you did, surely you reflect first on how this is going to affect you. And if it's going to affect you this way, well, how do you think it's going to affect the next person who's got an investment property? I honestly think, it's a way, it could be a quick way to get some money back into the government. We're in debt, and, this could be an easy target. But, the sad thing about property management is you're starting to lose property managers. And, it's not just like one property manager walk out the door. What you've got to look at is you've got to look at the years that are walking out the door. There are property managers like myself, who've been in the industry for 20 plus years, and they're walking out the door because it's not becoming hard. It's becoming so stressful, and you're taking on other people's stress. So, they're not being looked after. They're not being nurtured because this is what you're putting on them. You're now saying that there's a possibility that not only will you be fined, but you can have criminal charges if you don't meet minimum standards. Like, really? Is that a way to convince property managers to come into our industry? Like, it's not.
Fear, isn't it?
It's fear, and it's not nice fear. Like, you should be able to walk into your job and go, yep, all the boxes are ticked, we're all good today. Not sitting there going, oh my goodness, have I done the right thing? Is this the right thing? Have I ticked the right box? Should it have been a yes? Should it have been a no? What is going to happen? Could I be made an example of as well? I'm a small little business, but there are bigger agencies out there with big franchise, and there's high possibilities that that they could be pulled up, and that could be just one little franchise, but because their name is a big branding name, that puts all those other franchise in the same spot, because they're all under the same light. Whereas I suppose I'm a little boutique business. Yes, I will, consumer affairs will come in and, they will audit me as well. But no one really knows Debonair property management. It's those bigger companies that then people are going, oh my goodness, if they got pulled up, we could be next. And, the stresses on an owner have just doubled and tripled.
And like one of my other guests mentioned, that you said we need to not only fix the problem that there's lack of support for property managers, but they need to be brought, landlords need to be attracted to the state to reinvest in an ideal world. And it seems like the negatives, obviously because the budget's been announced recently and everyone's waiting for what's going to happen to do with property, which doesn't seem to be anything bad at the moment, or it's 10,000 layers deep, and we'll get to that next week. But if we flip the coin and look at, you obviously get a lot out of this industry because you've been in it for such a long time. And I understand that you're being a people person, you have a lot to do with a very important part of somebody's life as well. What would you say are the better things about this industry? Just so that we can finish on a higher note. I hope we can sit here and I can get the juicy goss and we can whinge all day. That's actually better for me. It's better for SEO. It's better for the transcription.
So I suppose I love looking at, the connections you make along the way. There's the rental providers who can actually become your friends. You don't ever, it's not how you plan it. It's just how sometimes it happens. I've had a rental provider, and she's gone through divorce and 2 kids and separation and remarriage, and it's been beautiful to watch. Sad at the same time, but then you hear the lovely, when they ring up, or you ring up to talk about maintenance or routine inspection, and it's having that bit of conversation. How's your family going? Or the rental providers who you've managed for 6 or 7 years, and they ring you up to say, I'm giving notice, and you're like, oh, I'm so sorry to see you vacate. We bought a property. We built a home. That is so nice to see that these people have an opportunity to have a mortgage as well. But yeah, they're those things that I love. You become, some people, you become part of their family. And recently I had a renter provider sell her house, and I was like, oh, I've managed your property for 11 years. And she's like, oh, it hasn't been that long. And I'm like, well, it was a year before I bought my business, and then I've had my business for 10 years. So yes, 11 years. And she's like, oh, that's gone so fast, and it does go fast, but look, it does. I think I enjoy property management because no day is ever going to be the same. You walk out, of your home thinking this is what's going to happen today. And you can have something, drastic happen. You can have some good days, bad days. And as a property manager, you're always learning. Like I don't have the answers for everything. And I think that's the part that's what makes the job interesting and challenging at the same time, because you all have to keep learning. So you're not just standing there behind a computer, answering phone calls. It's keeping on top of regulations that are changing. It's what's happening here. It's, and then it's conversations that you have with other property managers. And when they go, oh, I didn't know about that, you're like, oh, not that I want to be one up on you, but it was really nice to be able to share my information with you, because they share information back. And there's some beautiful property managers out there who give so much back to the industry. And they're great to have on your side when you've got those questions that you don't know answers to, and can give them a call.
You are a great resource like that for so many, I know. Just a slight change on subject. If we go to the fact that because you are an area expert, what's one of the, I guess, hot tips, either for landlords or potential people that might live in a property, so renters, either or, what's something around the local area that would be good for them to know? And you can literally name suburbs, or what's something that's a topic of news that you have an opinion on, so we can.
So I suppose the thing is, if you are looking at investing in property, you do have to do your research. I think it's definitely worth, contacting a property manager and saying what are renters looking for at the moment. I'm not saying that you've got an open budget to go and buy whatever you wanted to buy, but if you're looking at something and tossing up a couple of ideas, I think it's really worth finding out what renters are looking for. The most common thing is a 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom, double garage, bit of yard. That's the most common thing. Then, the suburbs are usually around where there are some really good schools. And that's the same for renters. So renters, I advise them to go and look at the schools that they want, that if they've got children, because in Geelong, you have to be in particular locations to go to those particular schools. If you don't fall in the catchments, then, there's a high chance that you won't get to go to those schools. So go find the schools that you want your children to go to, and then work backwards and go, okay, so hypothetically, I want my children to go to Belmont High. What's the catchment area? Right, they're the properties that's the area I need to look for the property. Don't do it the other way around, because you won't end up with the school that you want. And with renter providers, you can end up with a house that you thought, if you were to live in, was great, but maybe it's not what people are looking for. It's the same as if you were looking at building a house. Go and research, ask people what they're wanting. People might not need little study nooks. Could you make that into, I don't know, a walk-in pantry perhaps, or something else, something that you want? Something that you want may not be, and you've got to remember that that's the biggest thing when you buy an investment property. It's an investment property. It's not, unless you're thinking down the track you're going to live in it, it's not for you to live in. It's for somebody else. So you sort of have to put all those emotions aside and go, this is a business transaction, and do the right thing for your business, not for you as a person, if that makes sense.
Interesting. Yeah, because you're never your client. Are you? And we do make decisions like that. I do as well. But I really agree with you about the study nooks. And I don't have an opinion on any of this, but I could never work in a study nook. But that's just me.
It's like when you do renovations on a bathroom, and I only say that because I've just done one of mine, but at the end of the day, I'm not going to spend thousands of dollars on tiles. I can put a nice tile in there. I'm never going to use that bathroom. I still want the bathroom to be nice for my renter, but they're going to appreciate whatever it is. It's looking at different things like that, and I suppose when you get a rental property, you could, if you lived in it, you probably would do all these different things to it, and you'd appreciate those little things that you're doing, the different garden beds and, all the different little things that you're going to put in. But a renter's just looking for a home for their family. It's really surprising when you talk to renter providers and go, oh, the opens for 10 minutes. What can they see in 10 minutes? I tell you, Mr. Owner, they're in and out so quick. They just want to check the photos that you've done are legit, the description you give is legit, and that it's going to fit their beds and all their stuff. They're not buying the property. In 12 months' time, they might go, this house isn't for us. We've outgrown it. It's not, it's too big. We need to downsize. It's very different from the investment you put in when you buy a house. when you go and look at it, probably go look at it 3 times before you put an offer in. And you've got the rulers out and you're doing the building inspections. Rentals are very different.
Amazing. And are you available for consultation, Skye? I would presume you are. I know that
Absolutely.
you do management as a service. Awesome. So I'm going to make sure that near this podcast, every link of Skye's is available to all her social media channels. Her contact details are there as well. If you're Australian and you're obviously looking to rent or looking to get your rental property looked after, don't hesitate to contact her. She's a wealth of knowledge. Clearly, it seems like it'd be good to be talking to an experienced property manager, even if you don't rent or do anything through them in the first place. Obviously, if you're a property investor, I mean. And thank you
I
so
think
much.
I think just sort of finishing that, I think it's just talking to people. I think that's the biggest thing that a lot of people aren't doing. And I am happy to talk to renters who've got questions about just, is this okay to do? Is this not okay to do? I mean, I have a few who have reached out, and, sometimes I just need to hear that, what the property manager is saying is right. That's all they because, they trust what you say. And sometimes obviously we don't want to hear what a property manager's got to say. Maybe something is the way it is because it that way. So to hear it from a second person, to go, you know what, actually what your property manager has said is right.
Sure.
Usually is, just that second opinion, and it doesn't take much to make a phone call and to have a chat.
And then pay Skye for her time if you're doing that. She's a wealth of knowledge, guys. I'll make sure all the links are near here. I'm sure this is the first of many conversations that we'll have. Thank you so much for your time, Skye, and your expertise. It's very much appreciated. And
Thank you so much for your time.
Pleasure. I'll talk to you soon.